567 old men, women, children, and infants dead in piles and in ditches. That was the aftermath of the My Lai massacre. The My Lai massacre is an important but unknown event in America's history. American citizens need to know about these events, need to know about events in American history, even the negative and controversial ones. After thorough research of this topic, I'm here to inform you on the events and situations that occurred before and during the massacre, as well as the aftermath. First, we'll talk about the events leading up to the massacre. The massacre occurred during the Vietnam War, a war which America's involvement in was already controversial. In an article written by editors of History.com in 2009 that's titled The My Lai Massacre, it states that on March 16th of 1968, led by Lieutenant William Cawley, the 23rd Infantry, also known as the Charlie Company, entered the village of My Lai. My Lai is located in the Quang Ngai province, which is in the eastern coast of Vietnam. This province was believed to be the stronghold for the National Liberation Front and Viet Cong, which were both communist army groups within Vietnam at the time. Army commanders had told the Charlie Company that all people within this area were considered to be active or sympathetic Viet Cong members. And the Charlie Company was ordered to eliminate all threats in the village. After arriving in My Lai, the Charlie Company discovered that there was no Viet Cong, just old men, women, and children. Now that you know about the events leading up to the massacre, we can discuss what went on during it. The massacre was led by a barrage of artillery by the American soldiers starting at around 6 a.m., according to the interview of a surviving villager that was printed in a newspaper by the New York Times, and the article was written by Henry Cam in 1969. The villagers hunkered in their homes while they started to crumble above them. The Charlie Company walked into the village and was met with very little resistance from the villagers. The company ordered the villagers out of their homes, and they were herded into 3 large groups. Even after being nonviolent and bearing no arms against the Americans, the lives of the villagers were still not spared. Lieutenant Cawley ordered his men to begin slaughtering the villagers. Not only were unarmed men, women, and children killed, many women were raped and mutilated by the soldiers, and the soldiers killed many large livestock, and they burned the entire village to the ground. The American soldiers suffered 0 casualties throughout this conflict. The villagers that did survived by hiding under the bodies of their dead neighbors. Now that you know about what the massacre entailed, we can go over the aftermath as detailed in an article written by Stephen Manning in 1990. In March of 1971, exactly 3 years after the massacre took place, Lieutenant Cawley was sentenced to life in prison by an Army martial court. However, President Richard Nixon stepped in and reduced his sentence to only 3 years of house arrest in an apartment on a military base. Lots of Americans thought that Lieutenant Cawley, who was a junior college dropout from Miami, according to an article titled The Scene of the Crime that was written by Hirsch Seymour in 2015, as a scapegoat for higher officers who ordered the massacre and went unconvicted. Now that you are more aware and informed about the My Lai massacre, including what led to the massacre, what happened during it, and as well as what the aftermath was, even if you aren't a history buff, you now know more about America's involvement in the Vietnam War. Hopefully our country and military can avoid conflicts and controversies such as the My Lai massacre in the future. And here I have an image that was taken by one of the Army photographers during the massacre. And it kind of shows the dead villagers laying in their road around their homes that were all destroyed.